Hello, welcome to the Crackpot Podcast.
A beautiful day to start up a revolution. Molotov cocktails, martini shotgun shells, wild, 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 wild one. God forbid the cops get called. I say the more the merrier inside this free. See it fall. I got front row tickets to the greatest show of all.
I don't have any idea what episode we are on, but this is the Crackpot Podcast with LaFond and Lockhart. Good afternoon, James.
Good afternoon, Lynn.
Well, thank you for joining me. Hey, now that you've had the chance to listen to Dr. Dredd's episode, I wanted to get your impressions of that, too.
Oh,
the first episode that the Crackpot did not actually attend.
It was the first episode of the Crackpot Podcast in which the Crackpot did not cringe once. Right? Because he didn't hear himself saying, okay.
I said it plenty of times, though.
Yeah, I just did it. Oh, it's horrible. David, you just scratched the surface with David. He's done, I've lived 2 lifetimes in 56 years. Okay, just because, I only slept a couple hours a day for most of my life, but this guy's still doing it. I don't do that anymore. I sleep 5 to 12 hours a day now, depending on my physical activity. And, it's
5
nuts.
to 12?
Yeah, 5 to 12. It's not as tight a group as like 45 minutes to 3.5 hours, which is what I got for most of my life, or lots of times 0.
Good
50
chunk.
minutes on the bus or whatever. Yeah. But David has just done so much stuff. And for instance, his involvement in the martial arts. So you could do just a martial arts podcast with David.
All right, here's the things I would like to talk to him about now that I have had a chance to think about it more. I would like to talk about his experience coaching at the high school level, right? He was coaching. You can tell me about that, but he's
still a track and field coach, and he's coached MMA at the high school level. It's the only MMA high school program I know of in the country.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
And he's teaching karate by the time he was like 18 years old.
Yeah.
He's had kickboxing and MMA fights and stick fights, and he's done a lot of informal boxing and everything. He's done a ton of stuff. He knows a whole lot more than I do about fighting in general. I just know more about boxing. That's it. Anything I know about the stick, he knows about the stick. I've just done more of it. He's got the highest level of pain tolerance I've ever seen. One time, we'd both been up for 3 days, and I was on muscle relaxers. The kids we started to spar in the weight room with sticks before the class. So 3 or 4 kids were in there watching us, and we were going at it like cavemen. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't hit this guy's leg. I was always a real good leg sniper. I'm good at whacking the knee. You can see that on the cover of that one book. And he's lifting his foot up over his head. It's crazy. So I want to hit this thing. And between rounds, I was like, David, I can't believe that I could not, hit your leg. He said, dude, I can't let you hit it. I was like, why? He said, well, I was at this medical conference in Miami Beach, and I was running along the beach, and there's this dad out there with his kid, and the surf comes in, and I'm running in the surf, and I step into a hole, and I tear my ankle apart. Here, the kid's digging holes in the surf. So David pulls his foot up out of this hole, and his foot is facing backwards. He showed me how he did it, because he'd have to check his foot to make sure it was still in the socket or whatever, in between rounds. And he said the father literally almost passed out. He got so sick when he also saw David pull his foot off and then turn it around and put it back on and continued running. Okay. And then 2 days later, him and I are fighting, and I'm trying to hit his ankle with his stick, and he's lifting his foot up over his head. I was like, man, you should have told me. I would have never tried to hit your leg. He's like, we're seeking for the truth in combat here, so there's no excuses for weakness. We're in here to test each.
Right. Well, let me tell you.
He's mentally strong. He's strong. He's mentally stronger than anybody I've ever met on this planet.
So that he's qualified to fix his foot like that because he's an orthopedic surgeon, so he knew what he was doing. So don't try that at home. But the other thing I wanted to ask him about, which I'm really kicking myself for not asking him, but we would have needed more time anyway, is the opioid crisis. Both because, number one, because he's a doctor, and in his field as an orthopedic surgeon, presumably everybody that comes to him is in terrible pain, and probably a lot of people are looking forward to that prescription. Number one. Number two, because he's an athlete and he's had these horrific injuries, so he knows his own pain. And then number three, because I really need to push back on his libertarian tendencies. We know now that the Sackler family intentionally waged essentially an opium war on the American public, right?
Yes.
Now that's clear. So, how does a libertarian face this reality that we're under attack as a people by corporations?
I've flirted with libertarianism for a while, for a couple of years. I've been very
and I'm labeled, and he specifically didn't want to be labeled, but his tendency is, to fight for the freedom of others when those others just don't give a shit about you.
Well, what I would say about the Sackler thing, and this will segue into something else you said you want to talk about, they were proxy actors for the people who really want pale-face America addicted to opiates. All they want is freaks like David that can stay awake for half a week and perform at a high level, to run their machine, and they want the rest of us committing suicide with opiates. That's not the Sacklers. The Sacklers are just getting filthy rich off of it. They're the proxy actors. Just like you had the in Plantation America, the Quakers that ran Pennsylvania. They didn't have to keep their slaves in line because the Indians, the Delaware.
Well, I'm not going to let the Sacklers off the hook. There's no way I'm letting the Sacklers off the hook. No, because
you shouldn't let the Delaware off the hook either, because they were scalping Irish and Scottish and English slaves for the Pennsylvania Dutch. Okay, so they are these proxy actors in the old sense. The old sense that we used to talk about proxy action was when the British or French want something done, they go and hire some mercenaries, or they give some gifts to an Indian tribe, and they have somebody else attack the other large entity for them. Early proxy action was all about large entities using small entities to attack. Okay, but what you have now, is it the U.S. government, or is it the people, the internationalists that control the U.S. government? That
Sacklers are internationalists that control U.S. government. They are.
So,
They are
so they,
now. It's now showing that they were using their Swiss bank accounts while all this stuff is becoming public. That they've been moving their funds between their Swiss bank accounts in order to protect the riches that they have gained by killing Americans. Far more Americans than die from gun violence. Far more Americans than die from whatever. This is.
I would have to say that the U.S. government is the proxy force. The declaration of the drug war sets this whole thing up. Wars in different countries gives you access to these drugs. It's pretty obvious that the U.S. government is just a front for internationalist concerns. As crazy as it seems, because the government seems so big, maybe the U.S. government is just like the Indians were to the early plantation owners, just a hammer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the line between government and corporate and whatever NGO, the line is extremely blurred and not very important. Because it's easy to say, oh, well, we're not being censored because when Twitter kicks you off, that's a corporation, that's not the government, and whatever, so on. So it's all enmeshed. By the way, they unlocked my old Twitter account, so now I have two Twitter accounts.
Well, right now it seems pretty seamless between
Right.
international corporations and government. And I think it's because we're in a transitional phase that's going to tilt more and more towards just a corporate society. And to the extent that governments are left, they're just going to be shadow structures to mollify the people. They're going to be about as important as religion is today in terms of, how many people go to formal church functions on Sunday. It's going towards a corporate world, and actually myself and almost every single science fiction writer that I read have all predicted that. It's probably the major prediction that definitely seems to be coming true that science fiction writers have pretty much across the board made. That nations are going to give way to corporations. And right now we're in this really interesting phase where it's hard to tell where one begins and the other one ends. Now, I can tell you one thing that David told me about pain management doctors. He was really frustrated one night. We're having dinner somewhere. It was after a blizzard in Baltimore. Anytime that it snows, he's in surgery for like 4 days. Just putting the elbows, ankles, and wrists back together. Okay. He's just living at the hospital, putting people back together. He's talking to me about all the wimps that come to him. Like with me, he knows what my pain tolerance level is. So he'll just suggest, if I have a bad injury, he'll just suggest a certain level of pain medication he thinks appropriate for me because he knows what my pain tolerance level is. It's somewhat lower than his. Okay. Because
But
we
still
both
well
have,
above average.
yeah, I have like a Vietnamese level of pain tolerance, which is like 10 times more, than the normal person. But I'm like Irish and English. David's Irish and Polish, so he's got like twice my pain tolerance, okay, because he's got that whole lot of blood in him. Make sure you send him a copy of this podcast, okay? His old man once cut his finger off, working in a machine shop, and he just set the finger aside and just like kept working, just put some duct tape or something on the end of the finger. I mean, I knocked David's thumbnail off once during sparring. I mean, just like blew the thing off of his thumb. And he's like, okay, I'm all right. And we keep on sparring. And he does.
So I'm gonna do like some mom talk here because I have two children. And when your baby is born, after 24 hours, they come and poke the baby's foot to take a blood sample because they need to test for a few serious things, like if your baby's I don't know, it doesn't matter. There's a few diseases that they test for every single baby, and they do it by poking a little hole in the heel, the baby's heel. Well, when they did this to my older child, I thought she was going to die. She was like screaming. It took a long time for her to calm down. And, well, she survived. And then when they did it to my younger child, also a girl, this kid barely noticed. She just made a little sound. Oh, what was that? And then went back to sleep. So I think there's something you're born with, in terms of what pain feels like to you.
I wasn't born with a high level of pain tolerance. I was a sissy little fat boy when I was a kid, and a lot of things hurt me mentally and physically. I mean, the mental torment was so bad, I decided I was going to become some tough creature. And, I've been hit with more stick strokes than anybody in the world. Okay. I did that. So David told me eventually I'm going to start to form like calcification scales under my skin, and I'll become like a lizard, or like the Swamp Thing or some shit like that. And to a certain extent, it started to happen.
Yeah, like really deep scarring.
So, yeah, so I did. With me, it was something I did by forcing myself into this really painful stuff. And maybe David did it too, because David's been in martial arts. He was in it like 10 years longer than me. But the one thing he said about pain management people, after we got together after this blizzard, I was like, he's talking to me about, he gets so many people come to him because they've been turned into drug addicts by pain management specialists. And I said, well, like what happens if like the grid goes down, and there's like, you can't deliver this stuff or whatever it is. He said, if the grid goes down, I'm lining up all the pain management specialists against the wall behind the hospital. You're never going to hear from her again. So there's not going to be anybody to write those prescriptions. So.
I mean, the truth is that most post-operative pain can be managed with like Tylenol and ibuprofen. I've had my share of medical issues, and if you, one thing I learned is that you have to stay on schedule. Like if you're just using ibuprofen or Tylenol or whatever, or both, you have to stay, like you have to remember to take it again in 4 hours or 6 hours. And if you do that, that works. But people get these heavy duty things, for whatever little ailments they have. You start getting these heavy duty drugs that just make me sick. Anyway, I can't take them.
On the subject, Quinones, that's the last name. I'm sure I'm butchering it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He wrote that book, Dreamland, and
yeah.
he looked at this from a lot of different angles. It's an excellent job. And we talked about before. That's the opiate epidemic in this country was engineered.
Absolutely. Yeah, by the Sacklers and others, specifically for profit and perhaps for an even more malicious
but
motivation.
You have to keep in mind when stuff like this happens, everything about the opiate epidemic has benefited the United States government. There's nothing about the opiate epidemic that has not benefited the power structure. Yeah, how you see this guy, Trump, the guy that sits on his toilet and does like hilarious tweets, and he's like causing psychotic embolisms amongst all the most evil people in this country. This guy gets elected basically mission one, build a wall. Well, what? They only have 10 feet of wall built. I mean, they just haven't done it. And if that doesn't convince people that no matter how you vote, this government will never do anything to benefit the American people, that it will only do things to benefit the U.S. government.
Yeah.
This is the great gift of this,
the Trump
bad-haired
revelation.
guy.
Yeah.
It's just like this, is that the government is never going to do anything to benefit you. And only in the era of chieftains and ethno-nationalistic kings, did any people ever expect that the government would do anything to benefit them? People under empires, people under priest kings, they never expected that. Even people in a democracy like that
All
never
right.
expected the
I'm
government to
gonna
do anything to benefit them.
I'm gonna do a clever segue to our next topic. Okay. There's like a little thin layer of people who do think, and they might even be right about this, that the government works for them. And they're the people who say we are going to do this. We are going to do that. A few months ago, somebody leaked this audio of Tucker Carlson arguing with some kind of a Dutch socialist dude called Bregman, was his name, Rutger Bregman. And everybody just paid attention to the fact that Tucker had like lost his temper and he swore, so that's why they couldn't put it on TV, and they had to throw it away, but then someone leaked it. But what caught my attention and still rankles me to this day is this Dutch socialist told Tucker Carlson that, hey, America is a powerful country, and if America wanted to enforce a global tax regime that would benefit the people, whatever socialist ideals he has. But anyway, America is a powerful country, and America could just enforce a global tax structure. Like this is like some Dutch guy can just say, "Hey, America, this is what you should use your powerful military for." And then today or yesterday, there was like the Democrats had their debate, and the big headline that came out of that was Beto, Robert Francis O'Rourke, called Beto, saying, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s. And so once again, Robert Francis O'Rourke, is saying we are going to take your AR-15s because that will benefit all Americans for having fewer scary guns around. But it's like these guys are saying like they're going to do something, but they're not going to do something. They sort of believe, and maybe they're right, that somehow they're going to be in a position to tell American military forces what to do.
They believe they're going to be in a position to point fingers and convince the monster to go screw over the people they want.
And this
Hurt.
is right, and excuse me for talking so much, but because also David, when he was on, he was really upset about socialism, and I totally get that, and I totally understand it, but because this is what socialism is. Socialism is not like, hey, we're going to pool our resources and help each other out, we're going to help poor people, we're going to lift everybody up. No, socialism is, hey, it's my turn to say what goes, and I say that this guy is going to go to the gulag, and that guy's estate is going to be chopped up into little pieces and, put in my bank account or whatever. I mean, so realistically, I'm not against working together and pooling resources and helping each other, but socialism is that, again, that proxy action, like when I'm in charge, this is how it's going to be, and that the threat of violence, it just gets to me.
The secret is in the statement of the Dutch guy. He gets it. Socialists get it. Tucker Carlson doesn't get it. Tucker Carlson doesn't know what government is, but the Dutch socialist does know what government is.
Well, ironically, Tucker has been advocating this idea that the government should work for the people, and he's kind of pushed back against the hardcore libertarians on the right.
Then he doesn't know what government is. He doesn't.
He gets it. I mean, I think that's his little shtick, is that he's going to try to push for some kind of benevolent government for the American people. But he definitely gets it that the government is just ruining our lives.
Well, okay, first of all, the Dutch guy, has been obviously observing the United States from a relatively objective viewpoint compared to how we see it from inside of the United States turret fishbowl. The U.S. government for 30 years has been claiming to work as the world's police force, representing the whole world and, attacking people that are misbehaving around the world. So that guy didn't make any kind of leap. I mean, he's really just making a pretty obvious observation. And, okay, so the 70-year battle between the West and the Soviet Union, whatever it was, the Soviet Union collapses and the shitty little countries like Cuba just stagnate and they don't have a very good outcome. All the different failures like Venezuela with the socialism. People are really shocked that the United States is becoming socialistic after all of these failures, but they're not failures. The Venezuelan politician who manages to get to some first world country with a bunch of Venezuelan oil money and live happily ever after, the Venezuelan socialist government has not failed that guy. It's done a very good job for that guy. And that's what government is designed to do. Governments are nothing but pillaging systems that are put in place so that you do not annihilate a people and a nation. If you have people that are extracting resources from an area and you conquer them, you're better off putting a government in place that's going to enslave those people and permit you to pillage those people than you are just wiping them out. So that's how every government started, other than revolutionary governments. And revolutionary governments are just replacing the leaders. There's not, Mexico, what you had there, you had a tiny elite, terrorizing a vast population in Mexico when Cortez showed up. And now you have a tiny elite terrorizing a vast population in Mexico, hundreds of years later. The racial makeup might be different. It might even be stratified and have different races, but, this is what a government is designed to do. So the socialists actually understand what government is. They're either people that just want to eat the rich because they're losers and they can help turn this big machine against people that are better than them, which is a very common low human impulse, or they're the people in the control positions that realize, like Napoleon Bonaparte, that they can go from calculus major and artillery officer to emperor.
Okay, but Napoleon was out there, right? He wasn't sitting in his college dorm room or his office or whatever. He was out there on a horse, right?
Right. Yeah. He cut his teeth turning the artillery on some people in Toulon.
Okay.
Which I'm mispronouncing, but yeah, I mean he was a low-ranked officer.
But that's my point. We're not talking about Napoleon. If we were talking about Napoleon, I would be okay with that. If Napoleon showed up at the presidential debates and started firing a cannon, that would be fantastic.
Okay, but I can give you the analogy. Okay.
Yeah.
The Swede boys that are calling to have, Bob's guns taken away. Okay.
Right.
They're not analogous to Napoleon. They're analogous to the people that screamed to have Marie Antoinette's head cut off and stormed the Bastille. Okay. These are the people, the rabble rousers, the agitators that set the stage for Napoleon to take over. Because the type of people that caused this wave of unrest, they're just not the type of people that are going to do anything with it. So somebody else is going to be waiting in the wings and they're going to take advantage of it. And is it going to be an international corporation? Is it going to be some creepy NGO? Is it going to be an agency in the U.S. government? Who knows?
It's going to be a committee. I mean, this is what I don't like. It's going to be a committee of, have you seen what Beto O'Rourke looks like? He could easily be someone I went to high school with. That's extremely disappointing. That's not who you want in charge, okay?
Oh,
So this is my point. My point is not is not that it's surprising that government is just really the gang that's in charge. It's that so many people in our world today think that they're going to have a shot at saying what government is going to do. I mean, in Beto, okay, like he's for some reason a high profile guy who people believe somehow has a tiny chance of being president. That's fine, but you have people on Twitter like who are out there cheerleading like, yes, we are going to take your AR-15s. Like, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but where you're staying in Utah, there are people who are extremely well armed, who mind their own business, and who are not really going to sit around and let Beto O'Rourke come around and take their guns.
well, they don't have any choice. But first of all, the people out here, for instance, are so polite. I got attacked by a group of dogs today when I was out on my walk, and one of them weighed about 120 pounds, and I was alternately going for my groin and my throat. I got my knife out. The beta dogs ran away, and when the owner saw that her dog was about to get knifed, she called it back. A dump truck, and this dog and its little dog friends, it's a big farm dog accompanied by soy boy suburban dogs, okay, because there's a mix of farmhouses and suburban subdivisions here, charged at me across a busy highway. And in order to let the dog retreat back to its owner, a tractor trailer, a dump truck, and an SUV all stopped of their own accord so that this dog could cross back across the street. Okay, these are very civil people. They want to get along. The guns will be taken away one guy at a time. The first thing that you do is something like Baltimore, where if a cop defends himself with a gun, he loses everything. So then people stop defending themselves with guns. Then you start using red flag laws to just pick off one guy at a time. That's how you do it.
So you're correct. If the approach is a gradual approach, it would be successful. All right, if they do a gradual approach, they could do it. But something has happened lately, and it's either that the left thinks that they have really won and they can just hit the gas and go full speed, or that I don't know what the alternative is, or that they're like realizing that maybe they haven't won and it's not quite working how they expected. But all these things, like the whole population replacement through immigration and gun confiscation, Beto is not saying like we're going to do some extra background checks. He's saying outright, we are going to take your AR-15s. He's not saying red flag laws. He's not saying, so something is changing in the rhetoric, and I don't know how, if it's going to be borne out in the implementation. Everybody says, well, once the general election gets here, they're all going to go back to the center. We're just seeing like the primaries, everybody going crazy. So, I mean, I don't want to dwell on the politics of it, because what's more interesting to me is that our society as it is today has created quite a huge class of people who believe themselves to be like actually wielding some power in a non-democratic way, in a way of being this class of people who is considered to know and to have influence. Like we are going to do this.
And they all have their followers too. Okay, so the left doesn't think, it feels. Okay, and the people on the right think, therefore they don't act. What's going to happen is that all these types of people, they just provide energy for the manipulators. So if you can get 41% of the population into a fervor about, white guys with guns slaughtering everybody, then they're not going to do anything. Somebody is going to use that energy. And one thing, when you have this feeling, this is where emasculation gets you. The whole society's emasculated. So this is like, the wife with no brains just ranting and raving, and the husband that's thinking, he's immediately trying to work out a compromise because he's not allowed to smack the shit out of her. Okay. Because the cops are right there and he doesn't want to go to jail. So just like rural men with their guns aren't going to be able to use their guns to defend their rights because then it would bring down that massive U.S. military. What will end up happening is we probably have over half of the people in this country believe that there shouldn't be significant private gun ownership because they're brainwashed idiots. They all watch the media, and the media also says the same. And you have every network has multiple police shows that demonstrates that only police officers and military people can be trusted with guns. Anybody else that uses a gun is just a bad thing. So, network police dramas 30 years ago predetermined that most of this country's population is going to be behind people not being able to own or use firearms to defend themselves. Hunting will be the only thing that will be permitted, like in a lot of European countries. So, what the people on the right will do is the people on the right will actually agree to some kind of compromise, like red flag laws, or something else, maybe something that hasn't been thought up yet, out of fear that if they don't do this, that the left is just going to gain more momentum, and then there's just going to be massive gun confiscation. Nobody with any brains in the government is going to go county by county and take everybody's guns. It's just not going to happen. All you have to do is pass laws, and every county in this nation is being colonized by coastal people, and they're taking over the governments right here. The government in this rural area is now pretty much under the control of coastal liberals, even though this is, these people are all descendants from settlers from the 1800s. They're being swamped by immigrants, people that have ruined their own coastal cities are coming here. And to other places, I saw it in Whitefish, Montana. You got more suburban people from Seattle, Washington, or Detroit and Whitefish, Montana than are anybody that grew up in Whitefish, Montana, or came from there. So the power of a democracy. So this place was founded as a representative republic. Almost nobody in this country knows that. It was just founded that way to get the rich boys on board who were hijacking this country from England. And since then, the people have been brainwashed into thinking it's a democracy, when technically it isn't. But it only has to be a democracy in terms of emotional fervor. The purpose of a democracy is to provide energy, like the energy from an automobile engine in the form of the demos, the people, the brainless, mindless, brainwashed masses, to provide energy for the demagogue, which would be Socrates' the student, good-looking guy that, came up with the scheme to invade Syracuse, almost the entire Athenian military wiped out. Or it ends up with Republican fervor in France, being manipulated by a character like Napoleon that climbs from almost nothing all the way to becoming like the greatest military leader in history, because there's all this energy to manipulate. So this O'Rourke creature, whatever he is, all he's doing is he's like the glowing head on one of these nodes of like these mindless collective people that are providing energy that's being put in place, social energy, that a demagogue, or now you don't just have demagogues, you also have your managers behind the scenes. Somebody's just going to use that, and who knows how they're going to use it. But it's, the guns are going to go. The only thing that saves gun ownership in this country is an EMP blast by the North Koreans, a meteor strike, a comet, Toba super eruption, Yellowstone eruption. It's got to be something that actually wipes out the whole financial system and, stalls the infrastructure and instantly delegitimizes these large governments. Otherwise, all the guns, they either go away or you understand that if you ever
That you
use that
can't
gun
use
to
it.
defend yourself,
Yeah.
your life is over.
Well,
Okay.
I think that there's like a teeny tiny chance that if we're going to have a hot war, a hot civil war, it's going to be because of this idea. Because if there is some kind of door to door, and that's essentially what Beto is saying, that we're going to do some kind of government compensation and get all the AR-15s back and melt them down or whatever. And, something that is that aggressive, like a door-to-door type of inspection, I think there's a lot of people in the country that are just not ready for that. I mean, we have a friend in Australia who talks about this privately to us because he cannot reveal, he just, it's very dangerous in Australia. But I mean, he had some kind of domestic call, like where some kid in the house was
His son
his
got in a
son at
fight
school,
with a student,
yeah,
with another
at
student
school,
at school,
yeah.
and the other student was of a different race.
And so,
The other student claimed that it was a racial fight.
right,
Therefore, the household where the boy lived, and I believe the boy was with his mother, and the household of the father were both searched. And even this man's martial arts trophies were confiscated.
this guy, yeah, I mean, they come to your house and they just go over with a fine-tooth comb and they'll take like your garden spade if they think that you've been
Right.
training with it. So that's not, and that, maybe Americans are not really aware that that's what's going on in Australia. So we should
Used Americans and aware in the same.
well, I mean, we have elite listeners, James, you and I.
The NFL season
Has begun.
Has begun. Okay, Americans are not aware, but
but listen, okay, this is how it works in Australia. Americans who are listening to the Crackpot podcast from a direct source in Australia, if your kid, a teenager, a minor, has a fight at school, they can use that as pretext to come to your house and turn it upside down and remove anything resembling a weapon, even like the training sword that you have hanging on your wall behind your desk or whatever.
Similar things are happening in America. And this is from a personal source, I won't even tell you what city. If your child is going to school with a transgender child and your child neglects to call that person by the proper pronoun, is that what it is? Okay. Whatever identifier they want, then social workers will be dispatched to your house and you will be treated like a foster parent of your own child. Okay. So, this is already with humans. Okay. How hard is it going to be to fix this when you're just dealing with guns and gun ownership? To a large part, that there's going to be so many different ways that gun ownership is going to be attacked. And one of the ways is, David once told me about, an interview. And I heard this when I was with my mother one time in a car, and my mother's talking to her healthcare provider, and they're asking her if there are any guns or weapons in her house, if she feels safe. Is she afraid of anybody in her house? And she's looking at me grinning like she could have me locked up in a minute. And then they asked her if she was pregnant, and she's like, I'm 75. So David told me that there's this protocol now that the National Medical Associations want all their doctors to ask every person if they feel safe in their house. Why don't they feel safe in their house? Is there a gun in their house? So what you're going to end up happening is a lot of gun removal is going to start being initiated by schools, because children are going to be quizzed, is there a firearm in your house? And if they say yes, then social workers are going to be dispatched. Another way, this is how it will be addressed on the local level. On the national level, you will have agencies like the alternative tough guy fraternity. Okay. You have agencies like that putting pressure on gun dealers not to deal in certain things. There is probably already a federal list that the alternative tough guy fraternity has concerning gunsmiths, people who can work on guns or licensed to work on guns. These guys might just all get rounded up one day and you never see them again. They go out with their jacket over their head. Reloading supplies, something most people don't even know about. One of the first things the feds are going to do is track reloading supplies. And they can track these things back maybe years. And then they're just going to show up at a guy's house that has a bunch of reloading stuff. And it'll go out on a local news story that this guy was found with 27 pounds of gunpowder. He's building bombs of mass destruction, and he's got enough shell casings to arm a battalion of soldiers. And this is a dangerous guy. So what they're going to do is they're going to go after your softcore gun owners through the children, through social workers, and these systems are already in place. And they're going to go through the hardcore gun people, the people that are going to have all the knowledge, all the supplies, and just directly. And nobody's going to empathize with it. Most people aren't even going to know about it. It might just be like 5 or 10 guys in the county that are like would provide the entire arsenal for a county that got cut off from the rest of the civilization. And those guys are just going to be eliminated or marginalized. And it might just be a choice. It might just be a thing where an alphabet soup agency representative shows up with a bunch of SWAT goons in his bag and says, "Look, we're just taking all your shit. Okay. And if you don't make a fuss, okay, you're not going to see us again. All right. And we're not going to arrest you. And we're not going to do terrible shit to your family. You make a fuss, you run the possible scenarios, and they're going to be dealing with guys that run scenarios all the time, and they're going to know what these guys are capable of and what they're going to do. So there's going to be all levels of this that have nothing to do with any legislation, any national vote, anything. That's it. I mean, it's going to go away. They want to make sure that you can't defend yourself against the Guatemalans and the Africans and the machetes with your gun. Okay. There's a shame there's not some idiot that could use some money that's running around America that's an expert on machete fighting that might be able to help you out here. But, that doesn't have to be the case. I think he's retired. He became a loser novelist or something. But
He's not a loser. Don't say that.
This is the world that's developing, and the enforcement things, they're already in place. You don't need a vote to ban even certain types of guns. You just don't need to do it. It's all already there. And if the grid does go down, if something happens like that, the only people that are going to be allowed to use automobiles are going to be law enforcement, military. And they know who's got the guns and who's got the gun supplies. They're going to come and take all your gas out of all your vehicles. They're going to come and take all your stuff. So I don't even see the sense in fighting the political fight. Or what I'd suggest is, I know guys that have caches of guns buried out in mountain ranges and stuff like that. Yeah, and you got to do stuff like that. You can't. This whole fantasy, and the reason why people like Tucker Carlson, I really like him. It's really the only decent news show I ever saw. I watched CNN for 4 hours and I had one subject, Donald Trump, and then I get to a friend's house. I watch Tucker Carlson for 1 hour. And there's 7 subjects in that 1 hour, and they're all covered pretty well in depth. You can say, yeah, I really like the guy. But the reason why he's tolerated is because he gives people hope that if they just play by the rules and they vote, that eventually the government's going to work on their behalf.
Yeah. I don't know how it's really hard to come to grips with this, and even talking to David, I felt bad because he feels so strongly about socialism, and it's like, we're already there. We're already under a tyranny, you know?
But he's got one thing going for him, is that he's a direct actionist, and he doesn't believe that the U.S. government's going to do anything to help him out. Okay, so those are the only people that are going to survive when something really horrible happens. Everybody that thinks that the government is there to do the right thing, and the only reason why they never do the right thing is somehow because they're all the stupidest people in the country.
And the wrong guy got elected.
Okay, right. Yeah. It's like, we've had the wrong president, every time except twice. Okay. And it's like every one of these guys that's figured out how to become a millionaire without working, they're all idiots. Oh, come on. Okay. Everybody that thinks that the government exists to protect them and to serve them, they haven't watched the video of the lady in New York who's begging a police officer to let her into her car while a whole bunch of thugs are dropping buckets of water on her head.
Those
Okay, they
videos
have,
are really disturbing, actually. Because they did it
and,
to a couple cops, and then they did it to
and,
that woman. Yeah.
and it's all okay. Aggression is okay unless somebody gets hospitalized or killed.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So this means it's okay for you to abduct people, for you to do all kinds of other stuff. But what I'm saying is that the next presidential election, everybody that goes to the polls to vote, if the grid went down, like tomorrow, you got everybody that goes to the polls to vote. 99% of those people just all die right away because they actually believe in the government. They're going to be looking for somebody to come help them out. If the people that don't go vote, well, half of them are just a bunch of drug addicts and prostitutes and stuff like that. Who cares if they survive? And then there'll be a small part of those people who aren't wasting their time with the phony political process that might be prepared and might be able to do something. The people that are prepared is the people who already know that their guy's going to get elected. It's the tens of thousands of armed goons with government cars and government guns that always know that their man's getting in. And if once every 100 years their man doesn't get in, if it's Teddy Roosevelt or Donald Trump, well, then he's not going to be able to get shit done anyhow because they're all going to be stabbing him in the back and undermining him. Okay, so the people that have set themselves up in the survival system in case things get really horrible are all these guys that are working for federal law enforcement agencies. These are the only people that are going to be allowed to move. They're going to be robbing regular cops. They're going to be knocking off Korean liquor stores and robbing drug dealers when shit goes bad. And federal cops are going to be executing them and robbing them and taking their shit. Okay?
I'm not looking forward to it. Not my list of things to see and be excited about.
So I don't know how people are going in there. Sorry. You know what? Scratch that. Everything's going to be fine.
Everything's going to be fine.
Wen and I are going to schedule a vacation. We're all going to meet in Palm Beach, Florida, and we're going to pretend to be homeless for a week, like all 278 Crackpot Podcast listeners are going to impersonate homeless people in Palm Beach, Florida next year, and we're going to eat filet mignon and have mojitos. Okay, so that's what's really going to happen. Nothing bad happens.
I feel much better now.
Thank you. Okay.
I feel really good about
Bring
that.
Jimmy Buffett shirts, okay? Women, wife beaters only. We're going to get a bunch of Negroes from Brownsville in Brooklyn, New York, and they're going to dump buckets of water on you. All 80 girls.
Wait a minute, what?
We're going to have a wet t-shirt contest. The 8 girls that show up.
I'm not
we're going to have a
doing
wet
that.
t-shirt.
You lost me.
Well, you're the queen. You can wear your dress. You're the queen.
I just want to have a drink. I've had a drink. People might notice that. I actually have had a drink here. Well, I'm not really sure what all of that means. A vacation does sound very good. A crackpot vacation.
We're going to impersonate homeless people. It'll work out perfectly.
So this reminds me.
No, just all show up in Richmond, Virginia. Okay. And we claim to be heroin addicts. And they'll all give us a bus ticket, a 6-pack of Ensure to go to the destination of our choice. And if we all say we want to go to Palm Beach, okay, these bureaucrats that work in Richmond who can't afford to go to Palm Beach if they're on vacation, I guess they should. Sure. Fuck all those rich New Yorkers in Palm Beach. We're going to ship these losers down there. And then there you go. We got, 3 Greyhound buses.
The entire Crackpot Nation.
Right. Yeah. So forget the All
right. Okay. Well,
I apologize for getting dark there a while back. It's the person that really predicted the future was Jimmy Buffett.
That's
and
right.
I nominate Big Ron as king of our caravan.
Okay.
Everybody's got to have a cover story, like why they're homeless and everything like that. So you have a cover story.
Well, I mean, does anybody ever have a good reason for being homeless? Like, if you ask a homeless person, they'll just start a long story that has no beginning or end, or just...
The guy that had the best story was about 6'6", He was this thin, nice-looking, very well-spoken African-American guy that had all these gold bracelets on. And he drapes his arm around me. He says, "Hey, big guy, let me tell you a story." And he's like towering like a foot and a half over top of me. And I had to give him $1. He was so entertaining. And he just told me this great story about getting screwed over by the various women in his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he was really probably living in the kind of house, the Hyatt Regency.
Well, that's a practice that guy has.
Well, that's what our people need to at least get like 10 minutes of this.
You need like 10 minutes of rambling or just a story that's so weird and boring no one's going to want to hear it. Like,
The first thing that we'll do when we get the Crackpot Caravan going is there's going to be a dope theme lean contest where everybody's going to practice not heroin.
nobody is going to believe it. You're talking all kinds of things that I cannot possibly do. Okay?
Well, that's why you'll be the social worker from Richmond.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we stole your ID so you can get back in the government building.
I see.
Stay
So
up
I'm
above.
kind of like a Stockholm syndrome
Yeah. You're going to be like,
follower.
right. This is your role. You're a mother persona, just like
I'm the mother hen.
But you're in the Confederate States of Appalachia coming to Bing. You're going to be in charge of a secretarial pool.
No,
Make sure they know how to read White Christmas fairy tales to me at night.
wrong.
And
I don't know if we can air this episode. This is getting out of
completely
out of hand.
The Jimmy Buffett field trip is perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the kind of stuff you're going to have to do.
Every time you see Jimmy Buffett, I start hearing that song in my head. But I'm not gonna sing it.
I only saw one episode of The Twilight Zone, and it was about this little kid that saw the future. What he saw was like the sun turning into a supernova or something like that. And everybody knows that this kid can predict everything. So he gets on the news, the national news, the next evening, and everyone wants to hear what he has to say. And he just says tomorrow's going to be a great day. Something like that. Everything's going to be great. So,
well, that works for me. What choice do we have? Yeah.
I'm loving this. Okay, and we're supposed to talk about the squabble over who's the Fed poster.
Who's the Fed poster?
This was supposed to be subjects like who's the Fed poster. As far as like the right wing dissident broadcast personalities. I actually talked to somebody that's on the inside of WN politics today. And I dropped the phone I say, look, I'm being attacked by dogs. And I dropped the phone in my pocket. But he was pretty much done. I talked to him for about an hour. He actually knows the players.
Let me make something clear for the listeners. And this is 100% true. I have no clue about TRS. I don't know who the people are. Everything I know about them is because I have read about these weird gossip situations that they have, but I don't listen to the podcast. Here's a confession. I am a podcaster that doesn't listen to any podcasts.
You're so intellectually selfish.
It's just not my thing. So these guys, now what I do know is that TRS is a big organization of people who actually make money podcasting, and they have had issues lately. There's all kinds of gossip. So anyway, you didn't tell me anything about this, so I have no idea.
No, I didn't. I went and I did my research because a little bird whispered to me, read fence. Okay, that's from Gilgamesh. But look, I know of a few people from that organization that have been doxxed. Indeed, one man, when I was coming through his hometown, offered to have me stay at his place. And he was going to get right back to me. I've never heard from him since, and I found out from you that he got doxxed. And somebody else told me that he got doxxed. The whole reason why a lot of dissident entities exist is to get people to submit to a vetting process, which means they hand over all their information to somebody they really don't know. Maybe they saw the guy give a speech at a bar in Manhattan, something like that. And then once you're vetted, this guy might have 5,000 names with all the information attached. And if he gets in trouble because he says a bad word and some guys in gray suits and sunglasses knock on his door, he's going to hand all that information over if he thinks it's going to keep him out of his assignment. I know people who have actually been locked up over stuff that happened in 2017. And I had advised these people not to have anything to do with that, because it was a setup. It was, Pied Pipers, possibly being duped themselves, leading other people into danger that they weren't even bright enough to know existed. I'm not even saying that there's any bad intention here on the part of people who are getting other people in trouble. But once you get a guy that's got a family and the feds are grilling him and they're talking about all the horrible stuff that's going to happen to him, he's going to start throwing people under the bus. That's what they do. So a couple of things. If you want to trust anybody with your information about who you are. In fact, I coach guys and I have podcasted with guys and I have met guys. And when I meet them, I met a couple of guys on a mountain in the middle of Wyoming where there was no cell phone service because they were so terrified of people tracking them, feds finding them, getting doxxed, not because they've ever committed any crime, but just because they have politically incorrect thoughts and ideas. I never asked these guys what their real name is. And when they slipped and they accidentally talked to each other and said their real name, I didn't bother remembering it, which is easy for me to do. I was just like, okay, that's not lodging in my brain. I said, don't worry about it. I don't care what your real name is. I understand. And these guys are under a whole lot of stress. So one fellow told me, he said, you're the only person that I've met face to face that knows about my work who has a real name. You're like the only real person so this is very highly stressful for a lot of these people. You get people that are highly stressed and then they get pulled up by a couple of government goons. And if they have a bunch of people's information, it's going to end up being out there. A couple of tips on if somebody's forming an organization, maybe you just want to, be like V4. Maybe you don't have a little organization in your state where we're just about Irish cultural heritage or whatever it is. And we like to get together and do some boxing and, talk about our history and our ancestors and do genealogy studies and stuff. And somebody's going to be organizing this. Your organizer, if you haven't seen him fight, if you haven't seen how he acts when he gets punched in the face, then he doesn't deserve to be your organizer. Not if he's a man. Okay. If the guy's not willing to, put on boxing gloves and get punched in the face, then you can't trust him. Okay. That's a rock solid test. Henry Mencken says this from the Rebel Yell. He doesn't even care what somebody says if they haven't been punched in the face for it. That's one. If the guy asks you to do, these are leadership tests. People like Jared Taylor, Jack Donovan, Greg Johnson, Chris Martinson, he's an economist guy that I read some of his stuff. These aren't organizers. These are people that are advisors, guys that do a lot of research and they do writing and they're working on cultural preservation and reconstruction. That's somebody that's not trying to organize you and he's not telling you what to do. That's somebody you're getting information from. That's a whole different category of person. I'm talking about people like Richie. Okay. They're going to try to get you to do something, try to get you to wave an artificial, a Chinese made Polynesian tiki torch in the former Confederate state of Virginia. He's going to try to get you to wave that around in front of cameras so you look like a psychopath. Okay. I'm talking about people that are going to try to organize you. And it could just be organizing a hike, a men's retreat for the weekend. If he ever says, hey, buy my girl a beer, walk away, never look back. He's pulling alpha male leverage on you, trying to turn you into a cuck beta male. If he ever asks you to do something that you haven't seen him do, then don't do it. If you haven't noticed him guarding the door at the bar room that you're renting so no Antifa people come in there, then you shouldn't be going guarding the door. Okay? This is when it comes to this kind of stuff, when you are on the outs with your society and you're these internally ostracized people, the only tests that matter are manhood tests. Okay. Women can't have anything to do with any of this. Women cannot be involved in any organization. If there's a woman involved in this organization, it's no good, because anybody that gets a hold of this girl, even if she's a great girl, and threatens her baby, she's giving up all the goods. All right. She's going to give them everything she knows. The other thing is, where was this guy when you lost your job? When you got doxxed? When your dad died? Where was this guy? Well, if he wasn't there, well, then, he's not leadership material. I came up with 11 of these points. I can only remember 4 or 5 of them right now. I put them in the article. My brain thinks better writing than what I'm thinking. But this is the kind of thing we're looking for.
It's super important. It's super duper important, because this is a constant problem in your mind where you think all these things are wrong and everything I know in life is being threatened and being flushed down the toilet and being intentionally harmed, and I want to do something about it. And that's totally understandable, but the options that we have are not very good. You have these options of like hooking in with.
The key thing to remember in our society, and this isn't just for men, okay, so this would be for everybody, because it's the basis of our society. We're dealing with God here, or at least the functional, actual God of the American people and the modern Western world. If the person that you're looking to in a leadership position, if his leadership position is his living, if he's making money off of it, then he's already compromised. Anybody with a gun or a government credential can get to this guy, sit down with him, scare the shit out of him and say, look, you're going to keep making your money, you're going to play ball. Give us some names. Okay? So this is the main lever. You'll have probably more people will fold on money pressure in this society, because that's their God. That's what they worship. And it's tied in with their entire idea of family. To the effect that we have an idea of family left, it's all about, can you put your kid through college so he can be brainwashed to hate your guts? Okay? More people are going to fold under that, under threats to kill them. A certain amount of guys are just going to go nutso when you threaten to kill them. That's not going to work. But if you threaten the money, that threatens all of their social status, all of their family status. It actually threatens their life, because then they're going to be a pale-faced homeless guy getting stomped to death by teenagers in some American city when they lose all their money. So that's
and this is
number
one. This is a point that I have thought about a lot, and I haven't written it up the way that I want to write it up. But tyranny has gotten smarter, right, over time. Like, the classic example of tyranny is the gulags. And, if you don't agree with the leadership, you go away to this work prison where you're worked to death and abused in horrific ways. And the fact is that tyrants don't have to do that anymore.
Yes, that was very inefficient. Now they can just make you pay for your own little prison.
Yep.
And you don't even have to pay to move you.
It's much more efficient to just do things in the more efficient way, in an economic way, or whatever it might be. But you don't.
This is how Plantation America worked. They weren't locking people up. People weren't locked into bunkhouses. Maybe some workhouses in cities were locked because they had girls working in there and they didn't want pips just running in there taking the merchandise out and putting them to a different kind of work. But about 10% of African American slaves tried to run away from plantations where they weren't even kept behind locked doors, total free range. And almost no German Americans. When you talk about African Americans and German Americans in plantation America, you're talking about millions of people over the course of a couple hundred years. Most of them never even tried to run away, and none of them were locked up or shackled. Okay. They needed shackles for these Irish assholes that were always trying to. They didn't know what was good for them. So, you got to make allowances for the idiots in the group. It's a free range, totally free range slavery system now. The only part of it that isn't free range is the correction system. And this is a great resource for the government to have certain types of people locked up and then have the ability to dispense them in the population anytime they want. Dude, I had no, sorry, I called you dude. I had no idea that this is going to be such an uplifting. I'm so happy
You're
about
all
this.
charged
Seriously,
up.
this is great. This is great.
The
So,
point is that the Crackpot Podcast never does Fed posting. We never do Fed posting. We want you to be away from police, away from government intervention, away from people who are interested in you, and we just want you to not go to protests or demonstrations or whatever. Just seek the truth and live your life, but stay away from.
well, and I don't want people to think that, for the couple of guys that are listening to me from Greenbelt, Maryland, I don't want people to think that, when we're saying Fed, that it has anything to do with the U.S. government or anything like that. It's fanatic, epileptic delusions. Okay, so
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. We never talk seriously about anything.
I laugh constantly. Okay.
It's more like goofing around. We're not lying. We're just goofing around and chit-chatting and just,
We're just trying to expose the humorous aspects of the truth.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I mean, what other use does the truth have, honestly?
That's right. Just to provide some entertainment, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, black pills are just like those black jelly beans that I like so much. I'd skip right over the red ones and the blue ones. I was always going for the black jelly.
I like the licorice flavor too. I eat black jelly beans. I always say that if you ever come to the Bay Area, or if we ever, if we get to like visit for a day, that I would take you to all the grocery stores. This is so dumb, but
I had a question today
what's
about
that?
grocery stores, about how their management was selected.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Yeah, and it actually fits in with our conversation on governance.
But just the reason I'm saying this is because the jelly bean factory is actually not far from where I live. The Jelly Belly jelly bean factory, and you can go for tours, and it's fun to do. It's
that's cool.
Good thing for tourists, and they come by.
Okay.
But I would rather take you to the ethnic grocery stores and show you like how filthy they are and stuff, which ones are filthy and which ones are clean. So what did you have to talk about grocery stores today? We have to listen. If you want to know really about the Crackpot Podcast, it's about grocery store content. Okay, that's really the most important thing we talk to you about.
I say it saves me having to write this article. It gives me a way to get it out of my brain. The only reason why I write it is to keep from going insane, because I have a hard time.
Is it working?
It seems like I can only forget about 30% of what I write, which really sucks, And the other thing is, since I've been getting so much physical activity and I've actually been eating healthy and I don't have digestive problems, I've been sleeping a lot. Well, between 5 and 12 hours. And I've been having dreams. I mean, I avoided sleeping for like 35 years so I wouldn't have dreams. So the only time I have dreams is when I'm really sick. And then now I'm having dreams because I'm currently getting better, and that's just horrible.
I don't enjoy dreams. I don't like to, no.
But thanks for doing a book of nightmares.
Yeah, that one got published.
Charles. Okay.
Thank you, Charles.
I really appreciate that. A nice person did a nice review on it the first day out.
Yeah.
I expect aggregate sales to double in the next 4 years. I expect to have sold the total of 2 copies. But management.
How do they select management in a grocery store?
Management and manipulation, they go together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you just look at the first 2 letters. Okay, you are trying to select people.
Comes from the root for hands.
So you want to select people that are going to be able to manage other people. The first person you don't, the guy that's the janitor that cleans meat cases overnight, he's a psychopath. He's like that. He doesn't manage. The asshole that works at frozen food department because he hates everybody else, okay? He's a psychopath. The dairy guy, if he can keep your yogurt and your other perishables from rotting in the case, You don't want to distract him, okay? Because only 1 in 20 guys is actually going to keep your perishable stuff from rotting. So you find one of them, you put them in a dairy.
Yeah.
You find another of one of those guys, you put them in produce. You find another one of those guys, you put them in the meat room.
Yeah.
Okay, so those departments don't produce managers, but very rarely, like 1 in 40 managers will come out of meat or produce or dairy. And then when you get into the craft departments, like deli and bakery, what those people do is too important.
Mm.
Any asshole
They have
can
actual
tell,
skills.
right, any guy can tell the bag boy to go sweep up the parking lot, but not everybody can make donuts from scratch. Okay, so those people are off the table. So what do you have left? You've got the people that run the front end, which are guys that will end up developing a skill in either identifying a dominant woman who can run the female employees for them, okay, or he's a guy that figures out how to manage all the female employees himself, or he's a guy that's just going to be fucking the best looking female employees, okay? So basically a third of your store managers come off the front end are just cockhounds that are out there just like banging all the best looking chicks. That's why the best looking girl in like every supermarket's the bookkeeper or the head cashier, right? So, there was actually chains had competitions. Mark Silverstein from Basics had a competition with, D'Angelo from Mars over who had the best looking front end. Okay. And they gave more points for tits than ass because you see the tits when you're coming up to the register. You got to turn around and look at.
Hold on.
So no, so what I'm telling you about managing the supermarket, young lady,
I have to manage
do
you.
not interrupt me. Okay. This is very, okay. So basically, off the front end, a third of your guys are going to be sexual predators. And then some of these guys will get up in the higher management. They're going to cause your company lawsuits and stuff like that. It will result in you having a better looking front end and more male customers are going to want to shop in your store. Okay. But it's kind of a big liability.
I can't imagine that's really a big.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge thing.
No, I mean, drawing male customers, that's not a moneymaker.
Well, but I'm saying that's the upside of it. The downside of it is you're going to get sued by some bitch. Okay, that doesn't understand why she got hired in the first place.
Do you know what the Mike Pence rule is?
No.
Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, does not take solo meetings with women. I think he does.
I didn't either.
He does in the office. I'm not sure. I think it's like dinner. Like he won't do dinner meetings or lunch meetings with women. And when I was working in an office job, whatever it was, I worked with one guy. And this was a team of all women on our side, and the client was a guy. And he told us, we were all in a meeting together, and he told us, he's like, years ago, I was sued for sexual harassment. And ever since then, I am really careful, and there's certain things I don't do. I don't do meetings or whatever. And we were all kind of shocked. I'd never heard of such a thing. But I would never, take it personally the interpretation of the Pence rule is that it's trying to limit women's careers because if a boss isn't willing to mentor you as a woman one-on-one, then that's going to limit your career. So of course
you can still do it. You just do it with a woman there. You need a female management person.
People like to make fun of Mike Pence because he's,
he sounds pretty smart. Okay, so to get more serious, there's only 2 places you can pull managers from regularly. There's the front end where the guys have HR skills and they can count money. They can deal with money. They can do projections. They can work the numbers. This wasn't my end. Okay. And then when I managed the store, my co-manager was the front end guy. He handled the money and he handled the cashiers. When he wasn't there, I handled the cashiers. I never handled money. I couldn't handle my own money. Okay, so you either have the front end person he understands how to handle the money in the grocery store environment, and he understands how to handle a high staff of predominantly female people. Then you have the center store guy. This is the only other guy that's really on the docket for being a store manager. And he manages the second biggest department in the store. It's not 60 chicks. It's 10 guys. Okay. And like maybe 1 woman, but he knows how to manage inventory, and it's easier to lose money managing inventory than it is to lose money managing money because it's easier to put checks and balances in place with money. You just have somebody else count the money after he's done counting. Okay. Inventorying a whole store physically is a bigger thing. The downside to this guy is that his HR skills are going to have a tendency to be weaker than the front end guy. The upside is he's not going to be banging on your cashiers because he's got no personality because he spent most of his life working on a night crew with 6 other goons. So most of your store managers end up coming from the center store because they're less of a liability. They can control your inventory. Some smart chick's going to count your money anyhow. That front end manager doesn't count the money. He just looks at the girl's ass who's counting the money. Okay. The center store guy is the guy you go with, because he can limit your, risk on inventory and he limits your risk on dealing with your female staff, and female staff is the majority staff in a supermarket. And they're mostly local people. So that's how you get it. It's like most of your managers come from center store, then front end, then the occasional chick that was a bookkeeper, occasional meat manager, occasional produce guy. That's it. So it's about limiting your losses, which is what the whole business is about. But yeah, there's a huge sexual overtone to the whole thing because you're talking about a guy managing a bunch of women. So I had 2 women who were completely trusted by the owners of the company, the personal assistant of the CEO and the CFO. And there was no COO. I was being paid to fill that function. And these were both women. They were highly trusted. One of them sat in on every single meeting I did with a female employee. That's it. And that helped me because, the cashier knew that this girl was there as a witness for, so you're not just talking about the sexual thing. You're talking about this girl obviously feels comfortable with me and kind of trusts my judgment to a certain degree. And I'd find a way to include her and to make it a 3-way conversation, to make it a little easier on the girl.
Yeah.
And half the time, the female employee would insist on hugging me at the end of it. And I would just put my hands out to the side. And then it's just...
Oh, man. I had this boss I could not stand. She was awful. She was very difficult boss to work for. And one day she tried to hug me, and I was not going to have it. And I put my 2 hands and I grasped her forearms as she was coming in for the hug, and I just put my hands level with her forearms, and I grasped her each forearm in my hand, and I gave her a little shake and looked in her face and said, "It's so good to see you," and did not hug her.
Okay, that was well done.
I couldn't do it.
I haven't seen that before.
It was either that or like do a hip throw, like what Shane linked.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing was that
Shep linked.
One of these female managers that would sit in with me was a pretty tough broad. She was very protective of the female employees under her. She would go after men that would touch her. Okay. And, she would, sometimes she had some uncouth moments. She would say stuff like, "Don't worry, darling. If this customer, puts a hand on you, James is going to fuck him up behind the store," or something like that. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm here with my clipboard and my, ill-fastened tie." But
I was thinking about that because we were talking about proxy force and proxy violence before, and we got sidetracked into politics.
Well,
but
girls,
it's really natural to be like, oh,
in a traditional society,
James is gonna do something to you. Like if you come, I sometimes feel that. I sometimes feel that urge of like, oh man, if James knew about this, or something like that.
Hey, one time my youngest son got mugged by an older kid in the woods, and he took a stick that I had given him away from him. And I remember my son coming home really mad, and he said, "I told him who you were, Dad." And it's like, well, the kid said, well, your dad's not here, so I'm taking your stick, and he runs away. But I had like the black girls were good for this that I had on the front end. And some of them would just shut stuff around. It's like, a guy would come in there to start some trouble or something like that. He knew it was a Caucasian run store and most of the staff was African American. And he'd start trying to recruit girls off the front end to help him with his caper. And I had this one girl that used to point out shoplifters for me, and she would just shut these guys down. She's like, you don't understand. You know, the manager's an insane white man. He's like, he's one of these crazy white boys. Okay. He just doesn't give a shit. Like, it's like, he's not having it. So don't even, and she wasn't only talking about me. She was talking about Duz too, who was like much more insane than I was. I mean, these two black dudes hit him in the ass with a Buick going 20 miles an hour, and he was lifting weights at the gym that night telling me about it, and that car was wrecked. Okay. So, you know, he was a certifiably, you know, don't mess with a white boy. So very often the women in the workplace, when it came to outside predators, people that would come in to prey on the women or even steal stuff from the store, they would call in the proxy aggressor, which was only allowed to be the security guy or Duz or me. Couldn't be anybody else. Couldn't be anybody that wasn't salaried, that was an hourly employee for liability purposes. So that's really a natural part of it. Even the idea that you're not going to be molested by some guy because your brother's going to break his legs, which is patently against the law in our society, but used to just be the way things were. And we wonder why, you know, you can have like a million rapes in a year in a country, or why, you know, 80% of some women in some areas are raped. Well, it's because you don't have the natural type of proxy aggression. That whole impulse has been twisted in our minds into us crying for this big government brother thing to be our proxy aggressor for us. There's no possibility of it working as a protective device because there's no proximity. There's no way the cop is there when you're getting raped. It's just not going to happen. And everybody knows that. The rapist knows that, you know. And if you tell your brother and he goes and breaks this guy's legs, well, then he's going to prison. The way our society, you know, modern society has taken the idea of proxy aggression, which is originally, that's the whole thing about the hero. He's the proxy for the whole tribe, and he's facing something special. Or the man, he's the proxy for the woman when it comes to a threat from another man. It's taken that whole thing and twisted that into some kind of like frantic mob impulse, you know, to scream for action. And, you know, as often as not, it's just some form of jealousy manifesting itself. You know, you got these soy boys, they see a real man, they can take care of himself, and they assume maybe he has a gun. Well, they want to make sure that guy's disarmed. I mean, that's it. The guy I'm staying with right now, he's got this crazy dog. It's a dyke, and it's not his dog. It's like his grandkid's dog, and, you know, the grandkids in college, so he's got to watch the dog. And this dog will do anything it can to get off the chain. And it walked around the neighborhood with me and tried to start shit with all these other dogs, okay? Not the dog that attacked me, okay, but other dogs. And it's a female, but it's been neutered for so long, it actually marks territory like a male dog.
Yeah, they do that,
And,
yeah.
Okay. So, but this dog gets loose. And there's like, the next valley over has got this big town in it that's all people from the coast. All super rich people. You got like Tom Hanks and Michael Jordan have houses over there and everything. These people come through this valley to go use the resorts where the nature is. And this dog is loose on the street. Well, nobody can catch this thing. It's got 4 legs, okay? And it knows you're going to try to tie it up. So you just got to wait for it to get hungry and come back. So Bob's out there, and this idiot dyke dog is out there trying to cause trouble around the highway. And this hipster gets out of his car and tries to catch the dog. And Bob says, "What are you doing? You know, that dog, you know, it gets loose. You can't catch it. You can't catch it. You know, it's got 4 legs. You know, count." And the guy says, "Well, you know, I'm afraid he's going to get hit by a car. You should take better care of your dog." And Bob said, "Get the hell back in your car and go back to Park City where you came from." And the guy gets scared. He scrambles into his car. You know. So what you're talking about when you're talking about the split in the American body politic, you're talking about the split between Bob and that faggot. Okay? And then that's it. And then since there's more of these wimps than there are real men, they have more votes, and they're going to vote to have the government and eventually like government goons, that were probably guys like Bob that got recruited for this shit to come step on Bob and take his guns. That's it. And it's going to be organized in such a way that, federal agents that are recruited in Utah, well, they're going to be sent to New York. And federal agents recruited in New York, they're going to be sent to Utah. So they're not going to be beaten up on their own people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And that's, we got to stop thinking that people in government are just stupid. I mean, really, the whole American view of politics and why government doesn't work is based on the fact that we believe that the people that run the largest nation economically and militarily that ever existed are all the stupidest people in that nation. How stupid is that?
Pretty stupid. It's not all DMV.
I mean, these people can get elected. These people can get you to give them millions of dollars. They're stupid. I mean, they can, they can convince you that like little girls should be running the military. And they can convince you of that. And they're stupid? No, they're geniuses. These people are smart.
I don't know. I don't think that they're so smart. But I think that they have a self-interest that is really well aligned, to their actions.
All right. They don't get the smartest people because the smartest people are creative.
Yeah.
Okay. But they're picking from the top. I've coached guys that were graduating from good college and were being recruited by these agencies.
Yeah. But the thing is, they're not being recruited. I think the trick about government and the trick about collective of bureaucracies and collective action is that it becomes this organism. Each bureaucracy becomes its little organism that serves to protect itself and expand and grow and gain resources. And that's just a really good model for an organization. It just really works. Like, you don't have to be the smartest or the most talented because you already have the protection of the organization. You have the legitimacy of being associated with a government, and you have your pension. And, that pension is so powerful. Just think about, like, the typical cop. I know Baltimore is insane for cops, right? But, like, a typical cop elsewhere in the country is just a guy who likes to be involved in work. He believes in law and order. He believes in work and rules, and he believes in protecting people. And then you have this pension, and you can make this guy do anything. You can make this guy, who in any other context would just be a very good, solid dude that you could count on. But you have now a pension, and boy, he will stand by and watch Trump voters get beat the hell out of them, and he won't like it, but he will stand there and watch it because that's his pension.
It's powerful. You retire from the military or the police when you're maybe 41. Then you either go into police work or private security work. Then you retire when you're 62.
No, they do it simultaneously because you do like your initial military, whatever the commitment is, a few years, and then you do like a reserve. So you go into the reserve branch, and then you're also a cop at the same time. So you retire from the reserves at 40 or 41 or whatever, and you do another 10 years as a cop, and now you have 2 pensions. So
what a lot of the cops do is still retire in their early 40s, and then they'll go into private work.
Yeah.
And then they'll retire in their early 60s, and then they end up, by the time they're collecting Social Security, they're collecting 3 incomes.
Right.
All 3 of them are consist of, they all came from nothing but textiles.
All right. And they're
So,
still, and it's still like a solid dude who just, hey, he's upheld the law as he committed to do. But I mean, I remember when it was the 2016 election and Trump came to San Jose and all those cops were lined up and just watching it go down. And I asked my friend, who is, he wasn't there, but he belongs to a different department. And he has friends, and he just said, yeah, they were really pissed. They were not happy about it. They were not happy about being ordered to watch Trump supporters get beaten and do nothing. However, that's exactly what they did.
right.
So that's how
Well,
it works.
when you sell yourself,
Yeah.
there you go. But they're not people in an easy position.
No, it's a very tough position, and that pension. I mean, I can't really blame them. They're like middle-aged men with families, and they've been promised their whole life they've been promised a pension, and are you going to take a stand and do what? Beat up an Antifa dude because I don't know. I mean, that's just the way it is, and that's why we always remind people that that's the way it is. So don't go to one of these protests and expect something different to happen.
Yeah, if somebody wants you to go on a parade, he's basically asking you to, be the target of an ambush. And then if you get ambushed, you're going to be the one that gets punished.
That's right. And you're going to be the one that gets charged with a crime, and you're going to be the one that faces law enforcement, not the guy that attacked you. I mean, there's so many examples now of like from bike lock Antifa guy and on forward who these people just suffered no consequences, whereas other side, the conservative side or our side gets the full effect of the law.
Well, I think it's good because it's been eroding misplaced trust in law enforcement.
Well, I wanted to talk about something else, but maybe we'll just tease it for another episode.
That's
We're going to do
good.
it? Let's do it?
I start some tea.
Oh, I finished my drink, but maybe I can refresh. Well,
Do that. You'll cut this part out and just go get yourself another drink. Yeah.
okay. We don't have to cut this part out. See, I want listeners to hear that James told me to go get a drink. That's why I'm doing it. All right. Did Riley really tell you that Costco brand bourbon is good?
Yeah.
Okay. What's happening here is that I have a seltzer water. I drink these fruity seltzers, and I think it's partially frozen, and it's kind of exploding here.
Oh, okay. He gets it and he puts it in an aging cask, so he can
Oh,
improve the taste on his. Provided it's decent whiskey, he can improve the taste on it.
all right, Crackpot listeners. I have another drink, and what I'm drinking is Costco brand bourbon with whatever fruity seltzer I have in the refrigerator, which I just buy whichever one is cheapest, and ice, and a pink bendy straw.
I drank a couple of shots of whiskey with Riley and Bob tonight, and he brought some higher end stuff, but he said he uses the Costco stuff to put into his aging cask,
So, well,
and he thought it was good. He thought it was a tolerable, good Kentucky bourbon. And Riley is he's probably the most knowledgeable whiskey guy.
Riley knows his stuff. So, but the reason I am drinking this, I mean, there isn't really a reason, but it's just what I bought. This one is like a higher proof one, but anyway, it doesn't matter because I mix it with water. But what happened was that one night I was having a drink and I took a picture of it and sent it to Tony by text. And I said, "Look, I'm a boomer. This is really a boomer thing to drink. Costco brand bourbon."
Okay.
So I was making fun of myself and said, "Here's my boomer drink." And then he supposedly told Riley about it, and now Riley's going to include that in the story that he's writing. Which
Well,
Riley, I have a lot of chapters that you have sent me, and I just haven't done it yet. I haven't organized them, and so I'm working on it. But I'm really behind, Riley. I'm sorry about that. Are you going to see him tomorrow, or is he gone already?
no, it's not gone. We'll have breakfast tomorrow, and he's very excited about you working on it.
Oh, well, you can tell him that it's on my to-do list. I'm working on it, but I'm behind.
We'll let him know.
Apologize to my friend Riley, please,
Okay.
for me.
He's a gentleman. He'll understand. Okay.
He's very nice. He's very kind. So, but I think he put me in the story, and he's gonna make me drink Costco bourbon, Costco brand bourbon.
Wow, this was your first poem? Can I read it? Okay. All right, well, I'm not very good at reading, but I wanted to read this. Suicide is preferable to a company Christmas party. Interacting with gross couples who fantasize about their partner being trapped under the tires of a 16-wheeler. Masquerading. A healthy relationship makes me sick. I would rather snort lines of cat shit than be part of this ritual. I shook hands with over 50 people tonight. They smiled at me and pretended to give a shit about me. I will never be a thought to them again. I am a formality. I like that. I hope they go home and have meaningless sex. Marriage sex. I put that in. I hope they come and immediately contemplate suicide. Nothing would make me happier. How old were you when you wrote that? 25. 25. Okay, there you go. 25-year-old man wrote that. A blessing,
Is that Jake?
Yes.
Hey, Jake.
Thanks, Jake. Yeah, we're roommates. Man cave down here. So, an old geezer and two young men.
Oh, hey, I've been to
small space.
a corporate Christmas party or two. That's an accurate poem. That's an accurate sentiment. Oh, man.
So what's this other issue you have?
Well, this is what I want to talk about, and we don't need to talk about it at length, but something I'd like to return to. Okay, and we exchanged emails today about talking about what maybe were the pre-Columbian empires like in North America, South America, the Mayan, the Aztec, the Inca, and what are people like, and what are these civilizations like, and maybe what are compared to our civilization. And so I wanted to talk about these things because it's easy for people in our neighborhood on the web to get really hung up on the differences between people, and especially everybody loves IQ. And of course, I do think IQ is important, but I have these two pet characteristics that I think are more important. And so I would like to introduce them as, potentially recurring topics if you want. Okay?
Sure. Sorry, I thought you were on podcast. You're done, right? No, but that's all right. That's cool. We put that in. You can hold out if you want. No.
Oh,
Great.
he's staying in. Sorry, Jake, it's staying in.
Informality has its own momentum.
Yeah, this is freewheeling. We've been freewheeling lately. Okay, well, my two concepts are, one is obsession, and the other one, I don't have exactly the right word for it, but it's something like impulsiveness or recklessness or risk-taking. Okay, something in between those three ideas. And it has to do with putting your physical self at risk and also putting your ego at risk in public. Okay, and so these are two things, and I can give a little bit of an example. So for obsession, we talked about Napoleon earlier, and I think of Alexander and maybe Lawrence of Arabia, and I'm sure you can give better examples, but of men who just wanted to conquer. They were just obsessed with it, and they wanted to
Well,
do it.
you gave excellent examples there.
Okay, and then, but on the less exciting aspect of it, because I'm a nerd, you have Newton and Nikola Tesla, Isaac Newton and Nikola Tesla, and other types of scholars like that. Like, both of those guys never got married. It's just another interpretation of it where you get men who are completely absorbed in their interests and their thoughts and their goals. And these guys were solitary, you know, but they were every bit as obsessed with what they were doing as any Napoleon or anybody else. So I see these traits as being unique and important, and more important than IQ. IQ is very important. Obviously, all of these guys were highly intelligent, but they had something more, something different that wasn't just intelligence. Where the math that Newton did, for example, it's an intelligent person can do it in high school and can replicate most of Newton's work by the time they're 15 or 16 or 17. And so, you know, it's the intelligence is important. I can do differential calculus, but it wasn't going to be me to discover it, right? That's a big difference. I can copy it and I can figure it out and do the problems, but that genius, that special genius and the special obsession that it takes is something different. So I
Well,
just wanted to introduce those concepts.
you mentioned the risk taking. When it comes to that genius, inventor, innovator, uh, that's type of risk taking. It's emotional and it's social. If you fail, you're just some weirdo that wasted your life looking into this weird pursuit. And there's even a lot of people who succeeded, and in their time they were regarded as some weirdo that wasted their life. And then later on, they looked upon as some great innovator. So that's a type of risk taking that is different than Galileo faced church sanction. It would be like the UN coming down on you in a world without nations. It'd be pretty nasty. So, that's the counterpart of the warrior does. Really, it's a type of one. It's an investigation of something that's unknown, and it's a risk. It might not be mortal, but it's social, and it could threaten your sanity.
Well, let me ask you this. When a warrior is preparing to take the mortal risk, is a social risk a practice for that?
Oh, well, you'll see people that are good warriors that are people that aren't social risk takers and people that are. But the people that have fit the heroic mold, people that would be willing to, for instance, migrate to another area, try to invade some kingdom that we don't even know what's there yet. That has a tendency to be somebody that's an internal social risk taker. And it's something that's really, as far as the sources of it, that's something that's pretty unusual. When you look at early civilizations, they're mostly the victims of these kinds of people. Whether you're talking about the Middle East, Egypt, India, Mesoamerica and South America, China, these places just kind of wait to get attacked by these risk takers. And the only place where, aside from a few aberrations, you got like one aberration in the Americas with the Aztecs, who originally called like the Sons of the Dog, and they took over an earlier civilization. They were just like these nomadic savages that ended up taking that thing over. And then you had, the Incas were actually kind of similar to where they were just a war tribe and they took over an already existing civilization. They didn't do any technological innovations. They just took over. You didn't have any civilizations in sub-Saharan Africa, but the Eurasian steppe, that's where everything came from. All the stuff came from the Eurasian steppe. Most of it was, and the earliest part was all Aryan, and then you ended up with the latter part, at least in Asia, was, the Turkic peoples, that would take down civilizations, and they had the same mania for conquest and nobility. Even if you look at Turkish, even though it was kind of a settled empire, the way the Ottoman Turks went about war, every one of their campaigns was like a nomadic migration. They brought everything they owned with them in big tents and everything. It was a lot of stuff that was unnecessary to just seem to harken back to migratory behavior. And of course, right about when, these Turkic peoples are practicing this type of warfare that was originally practiced by the Scythians and other Aryan people. Well, the descendants of the Aryan people were doing the same thing on ships. And then when they land in these other continents, they're doing it there. So it's almost like it just came out of that crucible in the Eurasian steppes. And that's where it was. There's some minor examples of it, in other areas. I mean, the Zulus didn't have a civilization to go wipe out. If they did, maybe they'd be in the category.
Well, I do think that the Bantus are kind of the equivalent in Africa. Because Africa had a lot of different stuff going on, and the Bantus came and just wrecked everything. It's at a different level of advancement and intensity, but the Bantu is to Africa what the Eurasian steppe person is to everywhere else.
Yes, and when we look at the pre-Columbian civilizations that considered near mostly Stone Age did pretty remarkable stuff, and there's no hot debates whether or not they got the information that they used from somewhere else. But you're talking about, we now know that people were in the Americas as long as they were. Modern people were in the Americas as long as they were in the old world. There's no evidence that there were more primitive types of people in the Americas, but modern Homo sapiens, in the broad scheme of things, seem to get to the Americas almost immediately as soon as they became modern Homo sapiens. There's archaeological sites that have been dated by the same people that dated Old Divide Gorge in the same 2-year period that come up with a 400,000 to 700,000 year old date for modern Homo sapien technology in Mexico, for instance. Well, so it looks like you've got the same starting point for modern Homo sapiens pretty much around the world. And the civilizations that were in the New World, they were about 5,000 years behind. They're pretty much comparable to what the Chinese, the Indians, the Egyptians, and the Mesoamericans were doing in 2,000 and 3,000 BC. These people were doing a couple thousand years later. Those pre-Columbian civilizations actually, some of them go back to like 2000 BC. It's later. And there was missionary work on behalf of the Aztecs. You could see the way that they obviously were doing it, spreading a trade network, and there was kind of a daughter civilization, it looks like, the Mississippians, that were influenced by them, but it looks like it was kind of like developing trading partners. It wasn't some attempt to go settle far lands and start new countries somewhere. So the migratory impulse really seems to be pretty much limited to Eurasia. You see all these great civilizations and the cozier portions of the world where the environment isn't as tough, content to just stay there. And even when invaders from more harsh northern latitudes invade and take over, they'll end up getting seduced by it, and they just want to stay there. And probably America is the best example of this assimilation of civilization by the invaders, because, for instance, modern people have given up on satisfying their migratory impulse. But the migratory impulse was, slight migratory, not just, going to a better place to work, but starting a new thing somewhere else. And this came from a pretty narrow band of people, and these were the people that were on top in early modern times, and they're relatively not as numerous compared to the people on the bottom, and that's dragging it down. People are content to live in a hive now, which makes the modern world look more like the Aztecs, the Incas, or, some other ancient civilization that was content to just stay in the same place and have a really intensive and pretty sophisticated slave society, because with a lot more technology than we had in the 1960s, we pretty much completely gave up on space travel. It's just not, it's not even on the table. There's people that got pet ideas about mining asteroids and shit like that.
So if you
There's
look at
no impulse to okay, we're going to colonize the solar system. That's not there anymore.
If you look at a beehive or an ant colony, it's really pretty sophisticated what they do. And it's all based on instinct, they're not writing up scrolls of instructions on how to do ant life and for their descendants. So to me, that early civilizations like what you see in North and South America, pre-Columbian, or the very earliest Indus Valley civilizations before any kind of Aryan invasion, it doesn't take a great deal of innovation. It doesn't take a great deal of high intelligence or IQ. What it takes is little incremental improvements in what you're doing. You start with these small farmers, and as long as you have some system of authority, you can just kind of crank it year after year and make it more efficient and make specialization of labor, and you can improve plants and you can improve domestic animals, and so year by year you get a little bit better at it, and you don't necessarily need a great leap in innovation. You don't need to invent the wheel. In America, North and South America, there was no wheel and there was no arch. Those are probably related. And people will say, oh, well, they had toys with wheels on them. Well, a wheel isn't just a wheel. It's not just something that rolls. You have to have an axle, and you have to have a way to put a load on it. And it takes experimentation, and it takes failure. Last time we talked, I think you talked about chariots and how they would try putting blades on the wheels or something like this, or spikes. And, well, that didn't work. It's too easy to disable the chariot. So it's not worth putting spikes on the wheels. But somebody had to try it. Somebody had to come up with that idea and try it. It's not a matter of just cranking the efficiency on the technology that you have. And that's what we're back. We're in that mode right now, where we have this suite of technologies, and we're kind of just cranking it. Every year we're just squeezing a little bit more out of the technology that we have, and it looks like technological progress, but we don't have those leaps, and there's a few reasons for it. And one reason is that the low-hanging fruit has been picked, right?
Well, I think it's really tied in with ancient tribal peoples having to migrate, and you can see it in everyone, all the Western epic poetry. It's in it, even in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The people and the elders and the temple whores and the gods and goddesses, they didn't want Enkidu and Gilgamesh to go on their quest. And then after the gods took revenge and killed Enkidu, who was the wild man, that was Gilgamesh's buddy, then he went on his own quest again. He did it again. He went in the other direction. Instead of going to the mountain forests, he went across the ocean. So that's a lesson there about just the gravity, the pull that the civilization has on it. Yeah, some Persian egghead should have told a story similar to this to the Mongols, so they wouldn't settle down and just basically got eaten by what they conquered, where all that just went away. They just got sucked into it. So it might even, the Epic of Gilgamesh might largely be an allegorical tale about how, a people built around the warband, which is the root of Aryan and probably most Caucasian society, how it will just go bad if it just ends the quest and it just stops this migratory habit, which is tied in with exploration, innovation, and war. Sometimes it's just going to a place that hasn't been discovered yet.
War, when you talk about technology and innovation, anything you can think of technologically is originated as a war effort.
Like the space program.
Like canning food.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was
okay.
Napoleonic thing.
I mean, you don't even have to get.
You don't
have to look at weapons. You can just look around your house, and this stuff people came up with it because they wanted to fight better.
Well, yeah, like the space program was pretty much the product of German missile technology from World War II.
Yeah.
And now we're told that people got to the moon because of some African American secretaries doing that at a desk.
So look at this is one thing I gave you this example when we were on the phone, and I think that so I wanted to give it again. So what you hear nowadays is like, well, the space a space exploration was white and it was male, and that makes it problematic. And so all these arguments are extremely stupid because they presuppose that space exploration exists and that the white males just kept it secret or something, or so my example for you was like, well, when you were doing modern agonistics, you guys were every day experimenting with like different kinds of sticks and I love the weapons craft and the armor. You guys were making your own armor and your own shields and taping up your sticks and doing all this stuff. You're just making up as you go along and experimenting, right? And so it's like if someone comes up and says, well, why weren't there any Latina women in your club of stick fighting? And it's like, what are you even talking about? Nobody. You were stick fighting because you wanted to. There was no like stick fighting school that you enrolled in that said no Latinx allowed. No, you guys were doing it because you wanted to, and that's essentially the space race was the same thing. And that's what I think of as the obsession. It's like you're going to get obsessed with something, that's your business, right? You're not going to be like, wait a minute, there's no Pacific Islanders in my rocket club. It's your obsession. It's not your job to go and find someone to join it. If someone wants to share it, they share it out of their own free will.
I think it goes way back. Most humans are dead weight, and most kinds of human are dead weight when it comes to exploring new things. That's all. Whether it's internal or external, but I don't think it necessarily follows that abandoning all of external exploration is going to create some golden age of internal kumbaya. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure to just conform to this external delusion.
Yeah, the delusion is so powerful, and we talked about this with David. David and I talked about like just being at war with reality, and for me, it feels like that you can't be at war with reality. You can't win a war with reality, right? But there's no end in sight to this war with reality that we're in.
The idiots that are being duped are kicking and screaming against reality. They're doing that because the people that control their thought processes don't want the people to see or understand reality. That's all. It's like whoever was that asshole that cut down the last tree on Easter Island. So then there's no way you can get off of Easter Island. You're not going to have any more trees. You're not going to be able to build any more outrigger canoes. Somebody made that decision. Okay. I bet it wasn't some lowly peasant. I bet it was one of the chiefs. Okay. That didn't want anybody getting off the island and maybe bringing some friends back with them. I don't know. But that's what we have here. The people that have a vested interest in making sure that most people will actually fight against exposure to reality are the people that are managing the feedlot. So for them, it's good. For that elite, it's good. It's not a bad thing because they're running the hive.
Right.
You know, they're the only people that are, if things go their way, they're just going to be part of like the tiniest relative elite there ever was.
That's right.
If I knew who they were, I wouldn't let them get out of the room alive, but I don't blame them for what they're doing.
Yeah. So, is that uplifting for you?
Yeah. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Just curious, documenting reality while others scoff at reality.
Well, it's fun. I've got people that are smarter than me are devoting all their energy to denying reality. So they're actually leaving reality for my hobby so I can explore it. It's like everybody left the playground.
Yeah.
And I got the whole playground to myself, so I'm not going to complain. Now, relatively speaking, there's a bunch of other people like me, but compared to if you just look at a friend of mine has a YouTube channel. He said every once in a while he like takes all his cookies off and he just sees what most people were watching on YouTube, what's trending.
Mm-hmm.
And he just says it's mind-bogglingly banal. It's just it's not even something. It's not like it's because opposition's point of view.
No, it's not.
Like,
It's just for fun.
Yeah, it's just like total business. So
it's other
it's
kids like playing video games.
Fat guys seeing how much bacon they can put in a lasagna. That was when kids had video games. The few people that had video games when I was a kid, you couldn't wait to get on the video game. Not me. I mean, I just knew kids that did this, but the guys that played them, they didn't like sitting there watching the other guy play the video game. They were hoping he'd screw up and get wiped out right away so they could get their hands on it. They could play it.
Right.
But now you have what? The guy that has more YouTube viewers than anybody in the world is just a guy that plays video games and other people watch him play video games.
Yeah, game streaming.
And there you go.
So weird.
There you go. And, amongst the thinking or semi-intelligent portion of the American population, they're basically not having babies, but they're watching, I think Steve told me that 70% of the internet was porn as far as like the bandwidth that was devoted to it. So if that's true, then you got like all these people who aren't having babies watching actors pretend to be trying to make babies.
So
Okay. So
it's so weird. Yeah, I mean, it's not really a topic I can get into because I'm prude, but yeah, I mean, it's just so weird.
It's just an observational culture instead of a participatory.
Yeah.
Participatory culture. If you think about that, it makes the Romans during Caligula's reign having orgies. It makes them seem like pretty decent folks. At least they were in it. At least they were doing it,
Wow.
I think a large what goes along with the battle against reality is the people being observers, this observational appreciation of the world, and then most of that habit is devoted to observing pointless games or fantasies. I just think it's very useful for whoever is in charge. I don't know who's in charge. I probably provided them with some liver pate or something somewhere along the line as a grocery.
Well, on that uplifting thought, we always like to end with a little positive note for you listeners. Hey, thank you, Crackpot listeners, for listening. We're doing this for fun. It's for entertainment. And it's nice of you guys to listen.
Getting late and we've got shit to do in outer space. Mother can wait. We will take the ones worth saving. Pack your bags, we are vacating now. Forever, forever. There's a cosmic radio in my head and it's reading news articles and the correspondent sadly said the universe is flat. He also mentioned that gravity is caused by our cavities and our reflection of time's not a receding headline, it's all mass produced in the back of our minds. There's some things that we will never know, and I don't ever want to know. And so it goes. Let's fuck it up, let us run amok. Let's do the things that we want to do. We're animals after all. Out yonder through the traffic and the